Tulsi Maharani Jaya Vrinda Devi. Tulsi Maharani Jaya Vrinda Devi Jaya. Tulsi Maharani Jaya Vrinda Devi. Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Oh, thanks. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna. So this week we're continuing our study of the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, and starting from Madhya Lila. This is chapter 12 and verse 63. So loud. Prabhu sparse raja putrera haila prema vesha sveda kampa sru stamba pulaka vishesha. As soon as the prince was touched by Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, symptoms of ecstatic love immediately manifested themselves in his body. These symptoms included perspiration, trembling, tears, being stunned, and jubilation. So last week we heard about, this is the chapter entitled Cleaning of the Gundicha Temple. So this is about the pastime of Gundicha Marjana. And last week we were hearing, or ongoing somewhat, we've been hearing about King Prataparudra, who's a great devotee of the Lord, but because he's a king, Lord Chaitanya, whose association the king is eagerly seeking, because he's a king, it was stated that he automatically sort of disqualifies himself as someone that can be a devotee. So then Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, at the insistence of Ramananda Roy, who was kind of going to bat for King Prachaparudra, he wanted Lord Chaitanya to relent and speak with him and see him and meet with him, but Ramananda Roy wasn't making so much headway, but finally, after so much insistence, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu relented, and he said, well, send forth, if you have him send forth, the king send forth his son, we'll see how, we'll see how that goes, because it is stated that the son is as good as the father, having been, closely guided and instructed from a young age. So this is the prince that has come forth. And just before this text, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had said, I have become very much obligated just by seeing this boy. So when the boy came forth, I'm just going to regress just a little bit. When the boy came forth, he was dressed in yellow cloth with jeweled ornaments decorating his body. He also was just entering his youth. He was very beautiful. He was blackish in complexion and had large lotus eyes. So naturally, having this description, we can all think about it, except for the peacock feather and some other details, this boy most likely looked, well, at least reminded Lord Chaitanya of Krishna. And that's when he began embracing him and lovingly, bringing him into his circle. And he said, as soon as the prince was touched by Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, symptoms of ecstatic love immediately manifested themselves in his body, including perspiration, trembling, tears, being stunned, and jubilation. Of course, that would be the result of being touched by the Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So, next verse, text 64. Krishna Krishna kahe nache karaya rodana tanra bhagya deki svaga kare bhakta gana. The boy began to cry and dance, and he chanted, Krishna, Krishna. Upon seeing his bodily symptoms and his chanting and dancing, all the devotees praised him for his great spiritual fortune. Tabe Mahaprabhu Tanre Dairaya Karaira Nitya Shiyamaya Miliha Agna Dila. At that time, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu calmed the youth and ordered him to come there daily to meet him. Vidaya Hanaraya Aila Raja Putrelana Raja Sukha Paila Putrera Cheshta Dekiya. Ramananda Roy and the boy then departed from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and Ramananda took him back to the king's palace. The king was very happy when he heard of his son's activities, most likely wishing that was him, because he had been hankering for a long, long time to meet Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in person, to actually come into his circle. Putre aligana kari prema vishta haila shakshar parasha yena Mahaprabhura paila. Just by embracing his son, the king was filled with ecstatic love, just as if he had touched Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu directly. Recently we had, I think it was Maharaj had discussed in class how parents, like when you have a child, like that's a little piece of yourself, and then you send him out. And then whatever comes through or comes to that child automatically comes to the parent. It's a little bit of a, I don't know, it's kind of an inexplicable feeling, but you know, you just take great satisfaction in knowing your child has been duly received and appreciated and fulfilling that, desire, and somewhat living vicariously through the child in this case, because, he had the same effect of touching the king as Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had went through him. Se haite bhagyavan rajara nandana Prabhu bhakta ganamadye hoila ekajana. From then on, the fortunate prince was one of the most intimate devotees of the Lord. Purport by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Om Jnanatana Mandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunminitam Yena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha. In this regard, Srila Prabhupada Saraswati writes, Yat Karunya Kataksha Vaibhava Vatyam. If Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu simply glanced at someone for a moment, that person immediately turned into one of the most confidential devotees of the Lord. The prince came to see the Lord for the first time, but by the Lord's mercy, the boy immediately became a topmost devotee. This was not in theory, but in practice. We cannot apply the Nagna Matrika Nyaya formula. This states that if one's mother was naked in her childhood, she should continue to remain naked even though she has become the mother of so many children. If a person is actually blessed by the mercy of the Lord, he can immediately become a topmost devotee of the Lord. The logic of Nagna Matrika states that if a person is not elevated on such and such a date, he cannot become an exalted devotee overnight, as it were. This particular instance offers evidence to contradict that theory. On the previous day, the boy was simply an ordinary prince, and the next day he was counted as one of the topmost devotees of the Lord. This was all made possible by the causeless mercy of the Lord. The Lord is omnipotent, all-powerful, or almighty, and he can act as he likes. So there was a lot of, this purport is really packed, and immediately Prabhupada is sort of, I don't want to say smashing, but he's definitely discounting the idea that Nyaya, which is basically logic, kind of a logical, more of a logical approach to the Supreme. The Lord is Aptakama, he's Swarat, he's all the things that make him the supreme autocrat. And he can do anything he likes. So to sort of relegate that you must go step by step by step, I mean, yes, that's what we do in our practice of sadhana bhakti. That's what Prabhupada has given us, because we're not at that level to be able to closely associate with Krishna, especially upon first meeting him. But obviously this, the prince was of he was of a higher caliber. Of course, he was in the time and date of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And it's Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's prerogative to glance at someone and turn them into his devotee. I mean, that's what he did while he was on this planet. That's why he was going out to villages, and people just saw the Lord, and they were immediately transfixed, and they were surrendered devotees at that point. So if obviously he has that prerogative, he has that power, because he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And it was reminding me of a little snippet that I saw the other day, and I'm sure everybody's seen this little tiny video where Prabhupada is lecturing to a bunch of devotees, and someone asks him, Prabhupada, how long does it take us to become devotees? And before he could even get the sentence out of his mouth, Prabhupada cut him off and said, 1 minute. It only takes 1 minute to be Krishna conscious. And he said that he basically was talking about in the Bhagavad Gita, he quoted a verse from the Bhagavad Gita, and everybody was, I'll say when they scanned around the room of this little video, they had wide eyes, like it just sounded so fantastical that you could actually become Krishna conscious in a minute. But this is exactly what's taking place here, because, this boy is just entering his youth, probably, 8, 10, 12 years old, like that, and he didn't know so much of, I can't believe his dad was, speaking to him so overly about his ecstasy of wanting to meet Lord Chaitanya. And then he, sent his son at Lord Chaitanya's request, probably with, great hopes that, somebody will get the association of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And then he very easily becomes in his, close cadre of devotees, which, we're all in that same predicament. We can all experience that kind of immediate Krishna consciousness if we surrender and are submissively trying to serve the Lord. The prince just came forth. He didn't have any agenda. He had no motives. He had no thought about self-gratification or about, his own pleasure, really. He just sort of was a go-between. He was a messenger. And still the Lord showered his mercy on him because he was, he was open to it. If we're very open to that level of reciprocation, it will come. And, maybe it doesn't come in the way that we imagine, but it definitely is there for us to avail ourselves to if we're ready, that sort of mercy. So text 69. E mata Mahaprabhu bhakta gana sanghe nirantara krida kare sankirtana range. Thus, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu acted in the society of his pure devotees, performing his pastimes and spreading the Sankirtan movement. Acharyadi bhakta kare prabhure nimantrana tahan tahan bhiksha kare lanya bhakta gana. Some of the prominent devotees, like Advaita Acharya, used to invite Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to take his meals at their homes. The Lord accepted such invitations accompanied by his devotees. And, Advaita Acharya inviting a saintly personality, of course, inviting the Supreme Personality of Godhead to your house, to serve them in a humble way, to feed them, to, care for them like that, make sure he's, fed and all of his associates come, and, it's a very joyous and jubilant occasion where there can be a wonderful amount of reciprocation. But as we know from another pastime, sometimes if you invite someone over, there's going to be some, you have to make an endeavor. There's an endeavor to accommodate that. And then like one time when Advaita Acharya had invited over Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Lord Nityananda, that was a scene where Lord Chaitanya was watching very carefully as Advaita Acharya and Lord Nityananda interacted in very unusual ways. Advaita Acharya was questioning Lord Nityananda, where are you from? Who are your parents? What's your past? Kind of churning a little bit. And, Lord Chaitanya just sort of took that in and was accepting that service. But eventually, by that sort of interaction and that care and that, just trying to connect and trying to reach to that point, Advaita Acharya, of course, was receiving so much reciprocation by their lordships. E mata nana range tina hata gela jagannatera ratayatra nikata haila. In this way, the Lord passed some days in great jubilation. Then the car festival of Lord Jagannath approached. Pratame kashi mishre prabhu bolaila padicha patra sarva vome bolana anila. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu first of all called for Kashi Mishra, then for the superintendent of the temple, then for Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. Vinajana pashe prabhu hasiya kahila Gundicha mandira marjana seva maginila. When these three people came before the Lord, he begged them for permission to wash the temple known as Gundicha. He begged them. Purport: the Gundicha temple is situated 2 miles northeast of the Jagannath temple. At the time of the Ratha Yatra festival, Lord Jagannath goes to the Gundicha temple from his original temple and stays there for 1 week. After 1 week, he returns to his original temple. It is understood by hearsay that the wife of Indradyumna, the king who established the Jagannath temple, was known as Gundicha. There is also mention of the name of the Gundicha temple in authoritative scripture. The area of the Gundicha temple is estimated to be 288 cubits by 215 cubits. A cubit is about 1.5 feet. The main temple inside is about 36 cubits by 30 cubits, and the Kirtana hall is 32 cubits by 30 cubits. So it's a good-sized facility for Lord Jagannath to give audience to so many of his followers, and it's a very special place, particularly, it seems, to Lord Chaitanya, who was begging the superintendent of the temple, was begging, Kashi Mishra and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, let's clean the temple, let's do this humble service for the Lord. So by his example, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who obviously didn't need to clean anything or wasn't expected to clean anything, was trying to render and show by example his rendering of this very, very humble service to the Lord, which is instructive for us because, that's a hard thing for many, myself included, to be humble and do that very, very humble service. I generally can understand that, it's not a very glamorous thing. It's not, something that anybody really, sees sometimes, doing those things like, hooking up a hose to make sure the temple has water the next day, which is sort of tedious and dirty and, those sort of things, or fixing things or cleaning like that. So, this is extremely instructive. He was begging to clean the temple. I mean, that's practically unheard of, that anybody's begging to clean the temple. So that's our sort of, I'll say, a wake up that, okay, this is actually the mercy. The Lord wants to see that servitude, that very humble, taking that very humble position in the most menial tasks. That's actually, that's very pleasing to the Lord to see, those things being conducted, because it is, it's not anything that anyone hears about or sees sometimes, but it's just as important as dressing the deities. It's just as important as so many of the other more high-profile services. Padicha kahe ami sabha sevaka tomara, ye tomara icha se kartavya amara. Upon hearing the Lord's request for permission to wash the Gundicha temple, the Padicha, the superintendent of the temple, said, "My dear sir, we are all your servants. Whatever you desire is our duty to perform." And actually, I'll just say that's my feeling that, if someone comes and wants to render some service, try to facilitate, that service. Because a lot of times, especially if you're not here regularly, it's hard to know what to do, what not to do, how to do something right. So actually allowing servants to come and help, and then you can actually help them. That's a very reciprocal and mutually beneficial relationship. Visheshe Rajara Agnaha Nache Amare Prabhura Agnaye Se Sigra Karibare. The king gave a special order for me to do without delay whatever your lordship orders. So King Prataparudra understood that. He was behind that. He was, I'm sure, hearing about it. So was thrilled. Tomara yogya seva nahe mandira marjana eka lilakara ye tomara mana. My dear Lord, washing the temple is not service befitting you. Nonetheless, if you wish to do so, it is to be accepted as one of your pastimes. Kintu gata samarjani bahuta kaiye agna deha aji sabha ihan agni diye. To wash the temple, you need many water pots and brooms. Therefore, order me. I can immediately bring all these things to you. Nutana eka sata gata sata samarjani padicha aniya dila prabhura ichajani. As soon as the superintendent understood the desire of the Lord, he immediately delivered 100 new water pots and 100 brooms for sweeping the temple. Aradine prabhate lana nijagana srihaste sabarange lepila chandana. The next day, early in the morning, the Lord took his personal associates with him and, with his own hand, smeared sandalwood pulp on their bodies. He was anointing all of these devotees as servants of Lord Jagannath and as of his own, and kind of marking that as, the designated ones to take up this very, very important and pleasing service to Krishna. That's actually why we wear certain clothing when we worship the deity. And also it's said, and Prabhupada stressed this quite often, as devotees we should always look like a devotee, maybe not in particular dress, but certainly, clean and bright and, a mood of trying to give Krishna to others and, look like a servant of Krishna. Servants of the Lord don't necessarily, they don't look like vagabonds. They look beautiful. They're direct associates of Krishna. Sri haste dila sabare kaika marjani sabhaganalanya prabhu kalila apani. He then gave each devotee a broom with his own hand, and taking all of them personally with him, the Lord went to Gundicha. So all these devotees, they just showed up. Lord Chaitanya was there, So they wanted to be where he was at and doing what he was doing and in his association. So naturally, when you hand a broom to somebody, generally I've noticed personally that if you hand a broom to somebody, they may or may not touch it. But in this particular case, Lord Chaitanya, was the one to inculcate that desire to do that humble service. He was guiding them in that direction. And, they were going to follow. They followed. They were very happy to assist him in that way, no matter what the task was. Gundicha mandire gela karite marjana pratame marjani lanya karila sodana. In this way, the Lord and his associates went to cleanse the Gundicha temple. At first, they cleansed the temple with the brooms. Bitara mandira upara shakala majila simhasana majipuna stapana karila. The Lord cleansed everything inside the temple very nicely, including the ceiling. He then took up the sitting place, simhasana, cleansed it, and again put it in its original place. Chota bada mandira kaila marjana sodana pache taiche sodila sri jaga mohana. Thus the Lord and his companions cleansed and swept all the temple's buildings, big and small, and finally cleansed the area between the temple and the kirtan hall. Charitike shata bhakta samarjani kare apini sodena prabhu sikana sabare. Indeed, hundreds of devotees were engaged in cleansing all around the temple, and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was personally carrying out the operation just to instruct others. What a beautiful sight. Premolasi sodena layena Krishna nama Bhakta Gana Krishna kahe kare nija kama. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu washed and cleansed the temple in great jubilation, chanting the holy name of Lord Krishna all the time. Similarly, all the devotees were also chanting and at the same time performing their respective duties. Duli dusara tanu dekite sobana kahan kahana srujale kare samarjana. The entire beautiful body of the Lord was covered with dust and dirt. In this way, it became transcendently beautiful. At times, when cleansing the temple, the Lord shed tears, and in some places, he even cleansed with those tears. Boga mandira sodana kari sodila prangana shakala vasha krame karila shodana. After this, the place where the deity's food was kept, Boga Mandira, was cleansed. Then the yard was cleansed, and then all the residential quarters, one after another. So he began branching out, because everything in that mandal, that Braj mandal, or that, the temple area, was part and parcel property of the Lord. And as such, everything should be always spotlessly clean. Cleanliness is next to godliness. And even looking at something that, needs attention, and knowing that if you're looking at it, then the Lord sees it, because the Lord's in our heart, right? The Lord's seeing that. So you can't turn a blind eye. There's no way to really turn a blind eye to messes in and around the temple. And, Lord Chaitanya branched out, started at the temple and went out to the hall, the residential, the Boga Mandira, where all the bogas kept, and so many other spots where activities to worship the Lord, or even from a peripheral, from an seemingly outside, like where the bogas kept, etc., where the devotees live, all those things, that all is an extension of the temple. Trinyaduli Jinkura Saba Ekatra Karya Bahirvashelana Felaya Bahira Karya. After Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu collected all the straw, dust, and grains of sand in one place, he gathered it all in his cloth and threw it outside. E mata bhakta kana kari nijavashe trinaduli bahire felaya paramaharise. Following the example of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, all the devotees in great jubilation began to gather straws and dust with their own cloths and throw them outside the temple. Again, showing that example of finer and finer detail of how clean and how things should be accomplished. Not, I don't want to say that word, but halfway, it has to be fully. It has to be, you have to be invested to do these things fully. Prabhu kahe ke kata kariyacha samarjana trinyaduli dekile janiba parishrama. The Lord then told the devotees, I can tell how much you have labored and how well you have cleansed the temple simply by seeing all the straw and dust you have collected outside. Shabara janyatana boja ekatra karila Sabahaite Prabhura Boja Adika Haila. Even though all the devotees collected dirt in one pile, the dirt collected by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was much greater. E mata abhyantara karila marjana puna sabakare dila kariya vantana. After the inside of the temple was cleansed, the Lord again allotted areas for the devotees to cleanse. He just wasn't going to stop. In this pastime of Gundicha Marjana, it is said that when we're in that space where we can, just get down on our hands and knees and pick out the finest bits of sand and flower petals, dried flower petals, and last week I was having to pick out black sesame seeds from so many little crevices from the fire yagya, and bits of rice and everything. It was just everywhere. Everything, it was everywhere. When you're down and you're really that's actually indicative of really how deeply you're trying to clean the heart, cleanse the heart. This is the sort of the well-known metaphor for cleansing the heart is this Gundicha Marjana, because cleansing this temple in this way, or a temple, and the Lord's property with such fine detail, it's going over something with a fine-tooth comb. You have to, again and again and again, make sure it's a suitable place for the Lord to be. And that's the same thing with our heart. It's said that to really imbibe the mood of the spiritual master, in order to serve the Lord, one has to constantly be introspective, constantly do work on the heart to make it a fine place for Krishna to sit. And, he's waiting to sit on that throne of the heart with our pure chanting, with our pure devotional service, with our pure mindset. But how clean it's going to be is up to us. We have to go over it again and again and again, because every day something new crops up. With our chanting, the more sincerely we're chanting, the more anartas are going to bubble up. The more prevalent they will become. And actually, I've noticed that when you're chanting that intently, and so in the mind, you're actually feeling, a little bit lighter and a little bit cleaner. But the more you chant, the more things come up. It's sort of a process. That's our process. That's our sadhana bhakti process. That's our process of chanting the Maha Mantra every day. That's why we do those things. But when those things come up, they have to be rooted out. They have to be dug out. They have to be eradicated as much as possible. And, we have that opportunity every day. So, we're very fortunate in that respect. And the Lord will again allot areas for us to cleanse. Like I find as soon as I think, okay, that little anartha, okay, maybe I have that a little bit under control, and something will flare it right back up. And, that's Krishna showing, saying, okay, you still need work on that. It's not going away. You're not a pure devotee. Don't, you still need some time. So that's the Lord allotting areas for us to cleanse. And, that's a process that we all should embrace. It's very difficult. It's not a bed of roses. This isn't for the faint at heart. This is, real life bhakti. This is, our process that we have to dig into and just beg for the mercy to be able to continue that process, because it's a daily event. Shukshma duli trinya kankara sabakara hadura balamate sodana karaha prabhura antapura. The Lord then ordered everyone to cleanse the inside of the temple very perfectly by taking finer dust, straws, and grains of sand and throwing them outside. Sabha Vaishnava Lanya Yabe Dui Bara Sodila Deki Mahaprabhu Ramane Santosha Haila. After Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and all the Vaishnavas cleansed the temple for the second time, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very happy to see the cleansing work. Ara Sata Jana Sata Gate Jalabari Pratame Lanya Ache Kala Apeksha Kari. While the temple was being swept, about 100 men stood ready with filled water pots, and they simply awaited the Lord's order to throw the water from them. Chala ana bali ave Mahaprabhu kahila tabe shata gatani prabhu age dila. As soon as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu called for water, all the men immediately brought the 100 water pots, which were completely filled, and delivered them before the Lord. Pratame karila prabhu mandira prakshalana urva adoviti griha madhya simhasana. In this way, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu first washed the main temple, and then thoroughly washed the ceiling, the walls, the floor, the sitting place, simhasana, and everything else within the room. Kapara bariya jale urve chalalaya se jale urva sodi biti prakshalila. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself and his devotees began to throw water onto the ceiling. Where this water fell, it washed the walls and the floor. Sri Haste Karena Simhasanera Marjana Prabhu Age Jalani Deya Bhakta Gana. Then Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu began to wash the sitting place of Lord Jagannath with his own hands, and all the devotees began to bring water to the Lord. Bhakta Gana Kare Griha Madhya Prakshalana Nija Nija Haste Kare Mandira Marjana. All the devotees within the temple began to wash. Each one had a broom in his hand, and in this way they cleansed the temple of the Lord. I'm going to stop there at text 100, and we can see that, just when the devotees were thinking things were okay, Lord was pleased, they started in the temple, they went back out, then the Lord had brought him back in. The temple, that's the sitting place of the Lord, and that, like our hearts, needs to be the cleanest place that we know of in this body, as far as our mind goes, and that service, that's something that we can all kind of think about, this throwing water, picking up the finer and finer bits, even cleaning the Lord's throne and all of the periphery areas, all of those things. That's Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, indicating that that's our position. We're servants, and just like the servants there, we're just standing at the ready from His order. We're servants, and we actually need to also have some. We need to be self-starters with that. We need to want to do that every day, no matter how nasty or ugly that task is to clean. Well, thank you very much. All glories to the Chaitanya Charitamrita, all glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Srila Gurudev and Sri Sri Radha Golokananda. Hare Krishna.
Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam Kandar Agom Vikamaniya Vishesha Shobham Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasa Sakalen Priya Priti Manti Vasyanti Pan Vikayanti Chiranganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadhu Jala Vigrahasya Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami.
Govinda Hare Purusham Namah Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Motale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Samaniti Domine Namaste, Saraswati Devi, Gurmani Pacha, Nege, Nivasesha, Shunyavane, Paschachade, Zatarane. Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Advaita Gadadhara Sivasari Gauravakta Vrinda Jaya Sri Krishna Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Advaita Gadadhara Sivasadi Gauravakta Vrinda. Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Advaita Gadadhara Sivasadi Gauravakta Vrinda. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Advaita Gadadhara Sivasadi Gauravakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama Ramanam Ure Ote. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Gorakana Gorakana Radhe. Jaya Radha Gorakana Gorakana Radhe. Jaya Radha Hey, Radhe, Radhe, Jaya Radhe. Hey, Radhe, Radhe, Jaya Radhe. Jaya Radhe, Jaya Sri Radhe. Jai Om Vishnupad.
Makari Bahuda Nija Sarva Shaktis Tatrapita Niyamita Smaranena Kala Etadrishita Vakripa Bhagavan Mamapi Durdaiva Midvishami Hajjanina Nuraga Nada Pisani Chena Tarora Pisa Hishuna Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadahari Nadaram Najanam Nasundarim Kavitam Va Jagadish 2 days in a row, Prabhu. How many? Special mercy. Vavatad Bhaktir Ahoitaki Twai Ainanda Tanuja Kinkaram Patitamam Vijafat Kripayata Vapada Pankaja Tavakam. Yugayatam namishena chakshusha pravashayatam shunayatam jagat sarvam govindam virahena me ashlisha vapadamritam nastumam adarshanam marmata karotuva yatatatava vidadatu lampato mat prananata suseva napara. Victory to the Sri Krishna Sankirtan, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life, of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan movement is the prime benediction for humanity at large, because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we are always anxious. O my Lord, congregational chanting of your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings. And thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names you've invested all your transcendental energies. They're not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names, but I am so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than a straw in the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causeless devotional service birth after birth. O Sadama Rajnanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor.